Well, good day, everybody. Welcome to another Faith Seeking Understanding. I am Alan Bevere, your host. Faith Seeking Understanding is a place where all seekers are invited to ponder profound things. We ponder the questions no one else is asking, like, we don't care how many angels can dance on the head of a pin. We want to know what tune are they jamming to. Is it the Charleston, the Lindy, the chicken dance? Things like that. We ask those kinds of questions here. Actually, we have a very serious topic this morning, and I am very pleased on this episode of Courageous Conversations to be talking with Felicia Marshall, who has written a wonderful book called Grant Me Justice. It's a mother's journey from murder and mourning to mercy and dancing. This is an important conversation about seeking justice in the justice system. It's a conversation that needs to be had. Felicia, how are you doing today?
I am great today, considering all of the hills and valleys of a week. I'm doing pretty good.
Good, good, good.
Glad to
Well,
be here.
thanks for being here. Thanks for being here. So you tell this story. You tell the story of your daughter, Lexi B,
Mhm.
who tragically is murdered, and then after that, dealing with the justice system as the perpetrators of the crime are going through the system. So, I guess what I would ask you to begin with is just, and the other thing you do, by the way, is which I appreciate, you just kind of give a history of your own family
Mhm.
and domestic violence. So I'm just wondering if you could sort of set the stage for us um, on I guess maybe the first question I should ask is this would be, again, I mentioned to you before we went on, as a father of four adult children, I don't know if I could write this book if this had
Mhm.
happened to me. Uh, I just don't know. You did. What was it that motivated you to put this down?
I think the main thing after walking away from 3 years of my life fighting for justice for Lexi, the main thing I wanted to do was to just tell her story. I did not want people to forget Lexi B. And in telling Lexi's story, I realized that our stories were intertwined. And so, Grant Me Justice, the mother's journey, is really a compilation of not only Lexi's life, but my life as well.
Okay.
Mhm.
Um, so tell us a little bit about Lexi B. What was she like?
Oh, my sweet baby. Now, I used to tell people all the time was that Lexi was the one that I prayed for the most. But Lexi was rambunctious as a baby. She had open heart surgery when she was 2 weeks old,
Mm.
and she was the kid that I had to keep all of the wires taped because she would pull all of those away. In school, she was the one that was I would say the most athletic. She played basketball. She loved LSU basketball team, and her desire was to play on LSU's female basketball team. She played the drums. She loved music. She liked lima beans. Um, she was just and would give you this shirt off of her back. She was just a sweet kid, I think. She had her struggles, life struggles, like we all do. Um, but she was the kid that I prayed for the most because I felt like she had the most potential, but could not recognize that.
Mm.
Mm.
Okay, so wow. Well, how old was she when this happened?
She was 26,
She was 26. Okay. And what was the year?
2017,
Okay, so boy, that's not all that long ago. Um,
7 years ago.
yeah.
Mhm.
So put us help us to understand what led up to that day and what was going on that led to this act And then also, you tell it's riveting of being there and waiting for the news and not sure what was going on and just trying to, as any parent would, what's happening. So if you would begin by telling us that story, setting the stage for us, what led to this and your presence there.
Lexi was murdered on March 14, 2017. And she was murdered by an acquaintance of hers. Well, she was in a same-sex relationship with an individual. And it's my understanding that Lexi was trying to get out of that relationship. It was a very abusive relationship, and she was trying to get out of it. And it's my understanding that in her trying to get away from it, she was basically stalked for the entire weekend before her death. And once she was found, she had been back and forth to the house that Lexi was at. She had been put away from that a couple of days and told to, to go on about her business. And the last time that she was told to leave, she left and brought back two of her cousins, and they did a drive-by shooting. And Lexi was actually, from the testimony that I've heard, she was actually standing at the door when they came by and did the drive-by. And as she was trying to get in, they shot up the house, and she was the only one that was hit.
Okay. It sounds like she's standing at the door, so it sounds as if she was deliberately targeted.
Well, I think they knew who she was.
Okay.
I mean, they knew the house, they knew Lexi was there, and I think they knew she was at the door. Okay. But that was by their own testimony, was that the way that they knew which house was because Lexi was at the door. Okay. And so that was their testimony. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so you get to the house, you're sitting in the car. Waiting.
Yes. I was called. One of my sister-in-law actually called and told me that Lexi had been shot. In my mind, I thought that she had just been shot, like injured. I had no idea that she had actually succumbed to her injuries. And based on the reports that I saw via media, a female had been shot in the arm. And so for me, I just thought, well, she's shot in the arm, her arm can be fixed, And but once I got there, I realized that I was going to be dealing with something way more difficult than just being shot in the arm. Okay. And just like you said when you first talk, is that you don't think that this is something that you could do. And I think we're thrust into these type of situations. We have to learn what to do. And it was the same way for me. This was foreign to me. I had never been in trouble. I hadn't been around anyone that had been shot or anything like that. I had been, of course, in violent situations, but none that had led to a murder. And so this was foreign to me. And particularly as a mother, this thing I hadn't felt before. This thing was different. And even with her being shot, that was different for me. And getting there on the scene and seeing all of the people and just looking at the ambiance of a murder scene was something in itself to accept, if that makes sense. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. And I went through a slew of emotions, and I talk about that in the book, about feeling like that I'm a red umbrella in a sea of black ones. And that's what I felt like. I felt like I was the only one here. Like I was participating in a movie, and not really knowing what the scene is. And that's the way it is. That's just the way it has been for me.
Mm-hmm. So you do find out that it's Lexi who's the victim, and you have to do something no parent wants to do, plan a funeral and do all of that. Mm-hmm. What kind of experience was that? I mean, obviously it was a terrible experience, but I mean, what? Because again, you're doing things you don't have to do before. You're doing things you don't, yeah, encountering things you have to encounter before. And what did you want? What did you want? Because it's an opportunity. The way, I was a pastor for many years, so, and I unfortunately I had to do a few children's funerals. It's a last opportunity to care for your child.
There was a few things that um, were kind of mind blowing for me. Number one is identifying her body. And I talk about that in the book in detail about having to identify her body. The only way that I was able to identify Lexi's body was through the tattoos that were on her arm. And that tattoo, being a believer and I talk about my strict religious upbringing. And, I just always criticized her for writing up her body. And to think that that very thing that I criticized her for was the thing that I identified her body with. And I also talk about the fact that she had my name tattooed on her arm. And that looking back at it, I see it was honor. She was honoring me in writing my name on her arm. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't just a small tattoo. It was a tattoo from the elbow to the wrist. And that was the thing that made the detectives know that this was my baby. And so that one thing. And then, I always will remember, and those of us that have had to go to a crime scene, one of the things that we always remember is the blue lights and the crime scene tape. That will forever be ingrained in my mind is the blue lights, the flashing blue lights, and the crime scene tape. And you leaving there, we are given the responsibility of having to bury or lay to rest my baby. And of course, I wanted, this was my last time seeing her. And of course, I wanted to do everything, that I could to let her know that I loved her. And the whole process of that was hard. Again, I'm saying that this thing was foreign to me. I had never done this before. So every aspect of it, from shopping for clothes that would honor not only her and her personality, but would show her how much I really cared about her, and how much I desired for this not to be a thing about me, but about her. And so it was a lot of intention in that. And I talk about going to the store and picking out her clothes, and talk about how nobody in the store noticed or recognized the fact that I'm in there shopping for my baby's the last clothing that she would wear. Everybody else is just a normal shopping day. But for me, in my perspective, I'm seeing, girlfriends picking out clothes and, people just in there shopping. But this is the thing for me, that I am shopping for my baby's the last thing that I ever buy for her. And I cried, going down the aisles, I was crying. And it was ironic that somebody on the next aisle was smiling and laughing. And so I talk about that experience in the book.
Wow. Yeah. So the funeral is over with, and it took, as I recall, it took a year. There's 3 persons who have been charged, and
yes.
It took a year for that to even get in court, as I recall.
Yes. It took a year before I realized that the process was beginning. And again, I had no experience with the criminal justice system. I did not know what to expect. And I just expected, the attorneys to contact me. That was just I guess I just did not know. There was just ignorance on my part. I never called them. I just expected them to call me. As the victim, I felt like I had the upper hand, and I knew that they had my information, my telephone number, my address. And so my expectation was for them to contact me. And it did take a year before the process actually began. And I go through each of the plea deals that were given for each of the three individuals.
Yeah. So you go to the first hearing. You find out the day before, right?
Yes,
It's
I
just the
did.
day before. So you go to the first hearing. Walk us through what happens at that hearing, and of course what shocks you.
Everything about it shocked. Everything about it shocked me. I walked in, like I said, I walked in thinking I had the upper hand. I had no knowledge of even what a plea deal was. I had no knowledge that they were even had been offered a plea. And so I walked in thinking I had the upper hand, thinking that Alexis' life mattered. And I walked away feeling as if it did not. Um, the whole scene, I talk about walking into the courtroom and what that looked like, and I talk about the orange suits that all of the inmates had, and I give detail of what the courtroom scene looked like. But for me, as a person, this is my first time walking into a courtroom, and being able to inhale everything that my eyes and my ears are seeing, and being engulfed with these emotions, nervous about laying my eyes on the person that pulled the trigger in regards to my daughter's murder. For me, everything about it was foreign. And I was anxious, but hopeful, anxious, if that makes any sense. I thought that I would walk out of there at least um, with a 25-year sentence, at least. A number of people have asked, what does justice look like to you? What does it look like to you? And for me, I would have rather for it to be tried by jurors and a judge. To me, nobody won in this regard, because even though I've heard these details that they've given, I haven't heard all of the details. So I feel like the truth still has not been told.
Okay. And you this the first person, Evelyn, was the one
This is Evelyn.
Evelyn, and she made a plea deal.
Yes.
You talk about that, and you talk about that. We'll get to the other two.
Mhm.
There are plea deals that it almost seems as if the justice system is set up for plea deals, and that
Yes.
to have for Lexi to have her day in court, in a sense,
Mhm.
is not what happened.
No.
And
Uh,
you talk about you talk about the emotions of that, and you actually asked to speak.
yes.
Um, and is this the first time I'm looking here?
I've
Uh,
asked to speak at all of them.
you did speak at all of them.
Mhm.
Is this the one where you raised your hand and said, I want to
Yes,
talk?
this is the one where I
So,
raised.
so what was interesting to me as I read that was it would seem to me to be a normal, uh, just a formality to ask if the mother of the victim would like to speak.
Yes.
You actually had to get the judge's attention in order to speak.
Yes, and I thought well, first of all, because they didn't, the whole process to me was not done in favor of the victim's family.
Yeah.
And this was just another thing, in my opinion, that did not consider the victim's families. We're considered voiceless here. In the state of Mississippi, we have to write or request rights as a victim. And I just think that something about that needs to be changed, where we don't have to ask for rights. Rights should be given to us because the person that has been murdered can't talk.
Right.
And so, yes, after they had gone through the process and it appeared to me that they were about to end it all, I raised my hand. And because I wanted to say something, I just, give me an opportunity at least to come before the judge and plead my case, plead my daughter's case. My daughter, this plea deal is not fair. And I wanted the judge and all of the people that were in the courtroom to know that my baby's life mattered. And that to me, this is devastating to our family. This is hurting our family. She has a 3-year-old child at the time. I wanted them to know that that baby missed her mom. And I wanted the judge to hear and change the plea, because the judge says I have the right as judge to either accept this plea or deny it. So with her saying that, I thought that I had a chance as I approached the judge for her to change it.
Yeah, I thought, go ahead, I'm sorry.
And after pouring my heart out, I mean, I could not stand up. Mm-hmm. I could not stand up with all of
I was also thinking as I read through this. Of course, you know about this only the day before, but I would have thought, and again, I haven't maneuvered the justice system personally like that, but I would have thought that prosecutors would have let you know about the plea deal before the day in court, so you wouldn't have been, caught off guard. That at least, even if you didn't like it, you'd be able to speak to it, but at least you knew what was going on.
Yes.
And none of that happened.
Well, if you think about it, we were not contacted at all prior to Evelyn's plea deal at all. And so that makes sense that during the particular trial or the plea deal that we weren't considered either. They didn't even know who I was. Me showing up there, they didn't even know what I looked like or who I was. And that was the only way that they knew, is when I shot my hand up and says, I'm her mom, and I have something to say. It's unfortunate that victims have to experience this type of thing in the court systems today. There has to be a better way. Now, I don't think that this is everybody's testimony in everybody's city and everybody's experience through the criminal justice system. This just happens to be mine. But if there's any more like me, it's unfortunate.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any thoughts as to why this happened to you, or to what transpired or didn't transpire, or how does the system work that you did have this experience?
Well, I think, and I talk about going before the unjust judge, and that the criminal justice system is held by broken people. And whenever, justice is left up to broken people, then broken things happen, And so I just feel like it could have been a shortage of people from all levels of the criminal justice system. It could have just been people that just used to not doing what they're supposed to do. And I think that's the case. It's just people just not being held accountable for the positions that they're holding. And this was common to them. But anytime it's held by broken people, broken things happen.
Yeah. So the first hearing is over. You have a second hearing for the second person who has been charged. Same thing, plea deal.
And
you want to speak, and well, again, I should say at the first hearing you speak and the judge grants the plea. So
Grants the plea.
you expressed your perspective, but the judge went ahead and accepted the plea. So the second one, you have another plea deal, and this is Calvin.
Yes,
He
this
was
is
initially
Calvin.
charged with doing the shooting, but you don't think he was the one.
No, I don't.
Okay, that it was Evelyn.
And yeah, and Evelyn's plea, part of her plea was that she would testify against the other two. So, from my opinion, I thought, well, she may have gotten away with one plea, but surely if they put her on the stand, she's gonna perjure herself.
Yeah.
And so that plea would be rejected. So that's what I was banking on, is that if we went to court for the other two, since that was part of her plea deal, then she would perjure herself, and her plea would be revoked. But that didn't happen. And so Calvin's has always been pinned as the shooter. But Calvin told me that he was not the shooter, and I believe him.
What was his part in this? If he wasn't.
He said, according to Calvin, it was his gun.
Okay.
It was his gun. But he said that he was not the shooter. Calvin was at home working on a vehicle. He was a mechanic, and he was at home working on a vehicle when he was coming to defend Evelyn. And he said that he gave Evelyn his gun. And he said, Miss Felicia, Miss Marshall, if I had known that was what they were going to do, I wouldn't have ever given them my gun. Mm. And I don't think he had to tell me that. I mean, he had gotten a plea. Nothing about him telling me that was going to change his plea. He's going to have to serve those years without parole. And I just don't think that he had to tell me that. And I believe that he is not the shooter. Although he has been pinned as shooter, I believe with all of my heart, he is not the shooter. Now, I want him to be held responsible for the part that he did play. But if that had been my boy, I would not want him to accept a plea deal for something, to say I'm guilty for something that he did not do.
Yeah. Was he there when the shooting took place?
There were two vehicles. According to the detectives that I talked to, there were actually two vehicles. One that Evelyn was in and one that Calvin was in.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Evelyn had the gun, and he wasn't in that vehicle. Okay.
Right.
All right. So you speak at that hearing. Same thing.
Same process.
Same
go
thing.
Before him.
Yep.
Go before the judge. And when I'm going before these judges, I'm thinking about one of the plea deals I had before I was able to go up. My son was sitting behind me, and I could just hear the pain from my son and him losing his sister, and just the depth of his pain as a mother just did something to me. And as I'm going to approach the bench, I'm feeling all of the emotions of hearing him cry and weep for his sister. And then I'm dealing with my own grief, and also dealing with the fact that Evelyn had gotten a plea deal. So I'm dealing with all of that. And as I'm approaching this judge, all of that is being put in front of the judge. Everything about who I am, all of my emotions are being put out there. And you're talking about crying, just weeping almost to the point where I can't even talk, even having to wait. They having to wait for me to be able to even say one word. That's pain. Mm. And for a judge to be able to look at that pain and still say that I have the right to either accept this plea or deny it, and still accept the plea, I just don't know. I just don't know how that can be justice.
You did have some conversation with the prosecutor. One prosecutor was replaced due to health problems.
Yes.
You did have a conversation on the plea deals. What was the response?
This was Calvin's plea deal.
Uh-huh.
Calvin was one of the plea deals that he actually had two appearances. The first appearance, he was to go before the judge, and according to them, he was supposed to leave out that day. He was supposed to walk away a free man that day.
Mm.
And my response to that is that obviously this is not your child, because if this was your child, you're not going to tell me you're going to be okay with somebody responsible for the death of your child in any way, and then to be able to walk out. And I told them, y'all have to be able to see from our perspective as these parents of victims. You have to be able to see or sit in our shoes, walk in our shoes for just a moment, and pretend like this is your child. And if this is your child, as you're going before the judge and you're offering these pleas, pretend like this is your child. Because you're not going to tell me that you're going to offer a plea deal of 12 years if this was your child. Nobody's going to tell me that. And I really, 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 during that particular time, I really gave her a hard time. I gave her a hard time. I told her everything that I was thinking. So much so to the people in the adjoining offices came out to see what was going on.
Yeah.
But I then had to apologize to her. I had to apologize to her because I can imagine that, Lexi's case is just one of many. One of the judges said that she had 600 cases on her docket. 600. So you can just imagine how much and how devastating and how many horrific details of murders that these people see, and that they have to take. I'm not making any excuses for them, but they have to take that home every day, not just Lex's, not just seeing the gruesome photos of Lex's heart being pierced by an AK-47 assault rifle, but by other murders way more horrific than mine. And they have to take that home every day. And I had to apologize to her because I know that must be weighty. That must be heavy to have to take all of that, the things that she sees and hears, and all of the details, and all of the witnesses that have to be interviewed, and all of the parts and pieces of the criminal justice system. That has to be hard. But at the same time, as a victim, we want justice.
Yeah. That's a good way to express the tension, right?
Mm.
Yeah. Well, you have a third. There's a final hearing. And it's almost like the record playing again, December 2019.
Yeah.
And this is for Kiana.
Yeah, this is Kiana.
Or Kiana.
And Kiana, he actually had two hearings. He had one where he was supposed to walk free, and then once we got into the courtroom, the judge knew about Evelyn's case, and she decided that we were going to go to court. So I was excited that we're going to court finally we're going to court. So if we go to court for one, we can go to court for all of them, because somebody's going to perjure themselves. Certainly Evelyn is going to perjure herself. And that, I think that was the thing that I really wanted, because I knew that she was the one that was responsible for it all. But when we got to his final plea deal, she rewarded him the plea, and his plea was 5 years.
So five years in prison.
Mm-hmm.
And wasn't that the one too we got credit for time served?
Yes, all of them got
Okay.
credit for time served, but he was able to get out once he was released to the Mississippi Department of Corrections. That was during COVID, and once he was in the custody of Mississippi Department of Corrections, they released him.
Wow.
And
Wow.
according to the district attorney's office, once they're in the custody of the Mississippi Department of Corrections, they can do with them whatever they want.
Okay.
They can do whatever they want.
Wow. So you also talk about at that hearing, you write, as Judge Patterson presented the details of his plea, the person sitting next to me began to weep. The further we got into the proceedings, the more she wept. It was Kiana's mom.
Mm-hmm.
And so here you are, a mother who is grieving a daughter and also very frustrated in the journey to seek justice. Here you are with a perpetrator's mom right there. Tell us about that.
I tell you, I don't believe in happenstances. I believe that God ordains everything in our lives, and I believe that that was a God thing for me. And because what is the likelihood of two mothers on the opposite side of the table fighting for justice for their children? And this lady was weeping, and I was like, "What?" I mean, I did not know any of the parents of the perpetrators or any of the family members. I did not know them. So me sitting next to her was just like me sitting next to another spectator or person in the court. And so I had no, now she knew who I was, but I had no idea who she was. And so I sat next to her, and she was weeping. And I asked, I said, "Is that your son?" And she said, "Yes, that's my son." And I said, "I'm Alexia's mom." And she said, "I know. I saw you at the last um, proceeding." And I said, "Well, it's going to be okay." And I embraced her. I said, "It's going to be okay." And so this was before I was given the opportunity to go up to the judge. And so when I went up that time, I went up for both of us. I went up seeking justice for Lexi, but also recognizing the fact that Kiana deserved justice too, the justice that our Constitution gives him. He deserves justice. And I think there are probably a lot of people that are behind bars on plea deals that were given to them, and they did not do what the plea said that they did. And one of the things that I said when I went up there is that if that was my son, I would not want him to plead guilty to something that he did not do. I would want him to take responsibility for his part. But I definitely would not want him to plead guilty for something that he did not do. But here's the deal. For a family, the family is told, if you make up any kind of ruckus about this plea deal, that person can walk, right? The defendant is told, if you don't plead, you can get 40 years. So if that's happening behind the scenes, when a person comes to court, in their mind, they're told that they could possibly get 40 years. Of course, they're going to take 15. They're going to take 15. I would take 15 years probably. But they're in that. Number one, justice is never served. Justice is never served. These people are never given the opportunity to tell the truth, for the truth to be told. And I just think it's a disservice to us all, the defendant and the victim, when we're not given the opportunity to go in a courtroom before a judge with jurors for the truth to be told, for the evidence, all of the evidence to be put out there for everybody to see and hear, and then for a decision to be made by our peers and the judge.
Wow. Yeah, I have wondered from time to time. I'm no expert on this, but I have wondered from time to time how many people are in prison for probably less than they should be because of a plea deal, and
Mm-hmm.
how many are in at all because of a plea deal, even though they're not guilty.
Mm-hmm.
And it's staggering to think about
Yes,
this.
yes.
I did get a little bit of a taste of the justice system when I was a pastor in downtown Akron, Ohio, urban area, working with persons, and it didn't instill a lot of confidence in me in the justice system. Not because, again, I think there's a ton of corrupt people in it, but as you say, it's broken. The system is broken.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, well, this is just so you have this conversation with Kiana's mom, and then of course all of this is settled, and all the hearings and everything are over, and now it's time for you to continue to go on with your life as best you can. You know, some people, I may, if it was me, and maybe I'd be maybe one, just kind of curl up in a ball and sit in the corner, uh, grieving for the rest of my life. But you've used this, and you have, first of all, so one of the things you do is you write and tell the story. Take
Mm-hmm.
us through a little bit about that process of you making the decision that you're going to do something about this in a way that is going to help others who find themselves in a similar situation to you.
Well, I had no idea really that I was going to write a book when I walked out that day. I walked out that day actually feeling like I had been raped by the system. I felt like I had left something on the table, and I felt like Lexi's life did not matter. So when I walked out of the courtroom, I wanted to tell Lexi's story. I didn't want people to forget number 14. She was the 14th murder in 2017. So I did not want people to forget number 14. The court did not, or it appeared to me that the court did not see my daughter's life as valuable, but I wanted them to know from a mother's perspective who she was, who Lexi was, and why this is such a devastating thing in our lives, and that we want justice for her. So I walked out, I just wanted to tell her story. And I also walked out knowing that there were probably other people who had experienced the same thing that I did. And I wanted to find those people. That was my desire. Is I want to know, is there anybody else out there that has lost a child to violence in this city and wants to talk about it? And so I put out a call on Facebook and got a few calls for people that were interested in telling their story. And the very first one changed the trajectory of everything.
Mm.
The first story that I went to was a family whose son had been shot, two gunshot wounds to the head. And just hearing the mother and the dad talk about their son, how he took the son out of one vehicle, put him into another, drove him about 14, 15 miles to the nearest hospital. Although he knew he was dead, he talked to him the entire way. The mom gets there. She's about 45 minutes away, and the dad has to break the news to her that the son is deceased. And to hear her talk about her son, how he was a baseball player, he's very charismatic. He had dimples like her, and how he was in the community trying to help people in the community, how he was a giver. This was who she lost. She lost that kid. And so when I walked away from there, everything about what I thought I would be doing changed. I knew that Grant Me Justice would offer more than just an opportunity to tell stories, that Grant Me Justice would be a safe place for families that had lost loved ones to violence. I knew that we would offer counseling. If nothing else, we would offer counseling, because just imagine what damage two gunshot wounds to the head would do. And for a mother and a dad to have to witness that with their eyes, to see that damage of the child. That's the last image that they have of him. And so I knew that if nothing else, counseling is necessary for our families. And I knew we would do that. And then just after the first couple of interviews that I did with families, I knew that then it would have to be in the form of a book. Now, I never thought I had the expertise. I didn't think my story was valuable enough for people to want to read it in a book. But God said otherwise. And I started on this journey of writing Grant Me Justice, a mother's journey from murder and mourning to mercy and dancing. I wanted people to know Lexi's story. I wanted people to know about my experience in the criminal justice system. And I also wanted people to know about my hope, because my hope is in Christ Jesus. And although I may not get justice in the eyes of man, according to God's word, he promises, to avenge me. And that's what my hope is. And I wanted to share that same hope with all of the mothers that had gone before the unjust judge. Mm-hmm. Grant Me Justice comes from Luke chapter 18, verse 1-8, where the widow goes before the unjust judge seeking justice. And according to the word from Luke, he says that she was persistent in going before the unjust judge. Doesn't say what she was going for, what type of justice she was seeking, but it does say she was persistent. And I find us being persistent, going before these judges, seeking justice for the murders of our children. And so that's what Grant Me Justice is all about. God just changed that thing. I had in my mind what I was going to do, but God decided he was going to do something different. Yeah. And I'm so excited. Yeah, I was saying that I'm just, I had one idea of what Grant Me Justice would be. At that time, it wasn't even Grant Me Justice. At that time, I just wanted to find other families. Yeah. And from finding that first family and talking to that first family, everything about it changed. And God gave me Grant Me Justice, the organization where we started trying to reach out and serve other families that had lost loved ones to violence. And then the book came. I didn't think I had what it took to write a book. I didn't think that anyone, that even my story was valuable enough to tell. But God thought otherwise. And so look at us now. We're talking about Grant Me Justice.
Yeah.
The book.
What words would you offer to a mom or a dad who are going through something like this? What would you want to say to them?
The first thing I would say is to hang in there. I know that my hope is in Christ Jesus, and I walk away with that. But God is a God of justice, and he wants us to go to court. He wants us to hang in there. He wants us to go and seek justice for our children. But here's my thing. If you don't get the justice that you think that your child deserves, then don't give up. God is going to avenge us. He is the grantor of justice. And when man fails us, God doesn't. And so I would give that encouraging word to somebody. Don't give up. Go seek justice for your baby. Do everything that you can to seek justice for your baby. Here's the other thing a lot of us don't think about is when we're voting for these people in our local elections, the very people that I voted for, that I didn't have any knowledge of, those were the people that were in charge, that were in charge of my baby's case. Every last one of them I voted for. And these are the people that were in charge of my baby's case. So I say, go seek justice for your children, vote, be active in your community. Don't let your baby's name die. Don't let it die. Yes, those are my encouraging words.
Yeah, when you talked about voting, I thought, and every state does it differently, particularly with judges and people in the justice system, but how many of us really don't know the judges we're voting for if you vote for the judges and or the people who are in law, you vote for them because they've got an RD after their name, or you don't really think about that. How many of us, and I'm guilty, have not really said, let's see if I can find a track record on this person, right?
Right.
What? Because if I'm going to vote for this person who's going to stand before a judge or a judge, and maybe I'm standing before at some point in have I just willy-nilly pick that person without knowing? It's good advice.
Yes.
Do a little research, do a little homework. Yeah. Well, we are at time. Felicia, this book is just wonderful, and I thank you for writing it. And I know that it's already, I'm sure, touched a lot of people, and now hopefully touch more. Friends, we're going to put the description to where links to where you can get the book. Are there any links you've got that I can put up that they would benefit from? Anyone who is wanting to seek some more on this?
Oh, yes. Our organization's website is www.grantmejustice.org.
Okay.
Is our organization's website.
Okay. GrantMeJustice.org. We're going to put that in the description, folks, so that you can check that out, and hopefully you'll find some benefit. You'll find benefit for that for you. So we'll get all that done in the description. But that's all we have right now. Grant Me Justice, A Mother's Journey from Murder and Mourning to Mercy and Dancing. And it is a book I highly recommend for you to read. Thank you again, Felicia, for this. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, taking your time. And friends, before you leave, if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. There's no charge for that. And if you are on podcast, follow us. We'd appreciate that. And this is Faith Seeking Understanding, and I'm Alan Bevere, and the patron saint of Faith Seeking Understanding is Anselm of Canterbury, who said, I do not understand in order to believe, but I believe in order to understand. So friends, keep seeking.